Hello, my name is Ian Hartitz, lead fantasy football expert at PFF, and I'm back here with part 2 of one key fantasy football training camp takeaway for all 32 teams. Make sure you check out part 1 to get everything from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Jaguars. Takes us right to Arizona Cardinals. Marquise Brown has been activated off the NFI list. So originally, he was on the non-football injury list due to a hamstring issue. Cliff also called it an ankle at one point, but he's good. He's off. We need to see what's going to happen with the reckless driving charge or the speeding charge or whatever the hell they're calling it. Criminal speeding charges, there we go. But the good news is that Hollywood Brown, not the sort of lingering soft tissue injury that, hey, when you're not out there on the practice field, who knows how hurt he could be. The good news is Cliff was right, not serious at all. With the Rams, Sean McVay said that he believes the Rams have 2 starting running backs in Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. Specifically, McVay said, I look at it as we've got 2 starting running backs. Those guys are great complements to one another, but I see them as both starting caliber players. We need to get them involved. They need to be on the field. I think it's healthy for them to be able to supplement one another. The thing is, McVay has never done this. I did a study you can find on PFF.com looking at which offenses have been most willing to feature a workhorse running back over the years. Number 1, I'm sure you can guess it, the Pittsburgh Steelers. After that, though, it really is Sean McVay and the Rams. I mean, last season, Najee Harris had 11 games with over 80% of the offensive snaps. That was easily number 1 among running backs. You have to go all the way down to 5 games to find the next guy. But 2 running backs in that 5 games group, Sony Michel and Darrell Henderson. Whichever guy was the lead back for the Rams last year, they rarely left the field. We saw it with Todd Gurley, C.J. Anderson for stretches, Malcolm Brown for a few games here and there. I still think Cam Akers has every chance to take that job. And when he's going in the 4th round as the RB20, I'm fine taking that risk for the potential upside of having Sean McVay's feature back. On the other side of things, Darrell Henderson, where he's going, usually about RB45 range. I mean, that's good enough for me as a pure handcuff because we saw last year he was a legit RB1 upside RB2 as the lead running back after Cam Akers was forced to miss the entire season until the playoffs. But man, Henderson and Akers, I think both these guys have been mispriced all summer long. I don't like putting them on the same team because, you know, if you have Henderson and Akers, if Henderson balls out, you're pretty much forfeiting your 4th round pick. Same kind of thing on if Akers has a great season. But I do think, a lot of times Darrell Henderson, where he's going in drafts, round 11, round 12, fantastic 0 RB target. With the Seattle Seahawks, DK Metcalf back and locked in for the foreseeable future. 3-year, $72 million contract. He's going to be the number 1. The question is, what is going to happen with Geno Smith and Drew Lock under center? Historically, last 5 years, the number 1 wide receiver from a bottom 10 scoring offense, which I think we can all expect the Seahawks to finish in, has finished as a wide receiver 32. There's been 20 instances of that top wide receiver finishing inside the top 24, also 20 with them not finishing higher than 35th. So that's the thing with Metcalf. He is so just unbelievable good. Maybe we don't put him quite in the Chase, Jefferson, Adams top tier, but I think it's fair to say from a talent perspective, DK Metcalf is a top 10 wide receiver. Are we maybe holding the quarterback situation a little too against him? So I would just think of it like this. If Justin Jefferson was catching passes from Sean Mannion all season, would we move him outside the top 24 wide receivers? If Cooper Kupp had to be catching passes from John Wolford all season, would he be going outside the top 24? Maybe. We did see a brief Jefferson Mannion thing. We did see the last version of Jared Goff not exactly bring out the best in Cooper Kupp as well. Just realize, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as well. You usually don't see wide receivers that damn good as cheap as they are in fantasy right now. With the San Francisco 49ers, Deebo Samuel back and locked in for the foreseeable future. So he got the 3-year, $73.5 million contract, $58.1 million guaranteed, and he had those running back clauses in the deal. And the one thing Deebo did tell the media that, he just said it was a bull-faced lie, basically, that he had a problem with how he was being used. So a lot of signs seem to be pointing that Deebo will continue to be used at running back. I wouldn't think it's quite as much as it was in the second half of last season. That was heavily influenced by just the bunches of injuries the 49ers had in their direct running back room. Be careful though, guys. Deebo, we want him to get all the targets we can get. Rush attempts are not better than targets in fantasy football, particularly in full PPR scoring. And I think people are maybe looking at his 2 halves of last season a little wrong because, yeah, he was productive in both. Weeks 1 through 9, 21.2 PPR points per game. He starts playing more running back. Weeks 10 through the NFC Championship, it only went from 21 to 20 PPR points per game. Who cares? We're still scoring 20 PPR points per game. The difference, guys, his expected PPR points per game, which are just based on workload. So this helps kind of show us who the league's biggest and overperformers and underperformers are. Expected PPR points fall from 17.1 to just 12.7. Hey, Deebo made it work. He's incredible. I don't like situations where we need the guy to be like literally the most efficient rusher in the league in order to make this workload happen. So with Deebo Samuel, I have a really hard time prioritizing him ahead of some of these 3-down workhorses like Saquon Barkley, like Leonard Fournette, and even wide receivers like T. Higgins, who I'm just more confident have a realistic pathway to 130 plus targets. With the Atlanta Falcons, this one pains me, but per Kevin Knight, the clear top 3 emerging out wide receiver are Drake London, Bryan Edwards, and Olamide Zaccheaus. I love me some Auden Tate. I think the guy is a contested catch artist out there and just hasn't gotten a chance to really show what he can do in that crowded Cincinnati wide receiver room. Hey, it is what it is, though. Got to be objective in this business. Certainly looks like Drake London will have every chance to really take over this Falcons passing attack alongside Kyle Pitts, who's been a stud in his own right. But the Bryan Edwards over Auden Tate move, look, you're not drafting any of Bryan Edwards, Auden Tate, or Olamide Zaccheaus before round 20, if that, in a lot of these fantasy leagues. If you do, though, Bryan Edwards is going to be the pick out of these complimentary Falcons receivers at the moment. With the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Julio Jones is signed and Chris Godwin knee is practicing off the PUP list. Mike Evans did tweak his hamstring today as I record this on August 5th, but there's more and more options here, and it is looking like Mike Evans and Russell Gage, that just astronomical target share we were projecting, got to at least take a little bit of a step back. There's still plenty of touchdowns on the table with Gronk out of the picture in particular. Maybe Kyle Rudolph has something to say about that, but if anything, Julio Jones, hope you were taking him, in the final rounds in those best ball drafts. He's now going in the wide receiver 50 range. If anything here, I dropped Russell Gage down and I moved Chris Godwin up because, hey, if we had no issues with this entire Tampa Bay wide receiver room, everyone was healthy, everyone was good to go, it'd be really difficult to not rate Chris Godwin as a top 12 wide receiver starting tomorrow. In Carolina, pretty quick one. It's a wide open quarterback competition between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. May the best man win. And by that, I mean, please start Baker Mayfield. They play the Browns in week 1. That would be such a fun revenge game. Baker would be going absolute apeshit if they find a way how to knock off the Browns in week 1. With the Saints, yes, it's big news that Michael Thomas is activated off the PUP with the ankle injury. Seems to be running routes just fine. Bigger news, though, is that Alvin Kamara's court hearing has been postponed until September 29th. This is just like the preliminary hearing, and they've now gotten it delayed multiple times. It's looking more and more likely, and I've looked for other sources. I am not a legal expert here. Shout out Drew Davenport in the fantasy football industry. He always does great work on this stuff. He has awesome threads that you can find on Twitter. Looking more and more likely that Alvin Kamara will not be suspended for the 2022 season. We'll see what happens in 2023 and beyond. If there is absolutely zero concerns about Kamara's, suspension risk, I would have him as my RB6 overall. Because there still is I have a really hard time deciding between him and Javonte Williams. I've kind of gone back and forth. So borderline RB1 as things stand. Hopefully we get even more clarity and we can boost him back up where he belongs. But guys, as long as there is this little bit of cloud, if you are drafting right now, Alvin Kamara round 3 all day, every day. There's just not another player in this range that, hey, you're drafting him in round 3, you're drafting him as an RB12, RB13. But once we get to week 1 and we know he's out there, that dude's going to be back into the top 6 where he belongs. With the Chicago Bears, Velus Jones Jr. has a real clear path to be this offense's number 2 wide receiver. Yes, he's 25 years old, but guys, I just read the fantasy rules before I started this video. If Velus Jones scores a touchdown, it still counts as the same amount of points as if Mike Evans or any other player in the league scores a touchdown. Just because he's old and just because, your favorite fantasy analyst model doesn't have a long track record of 25-year-old rookie receivers doing much, doesn't mean he needs to be completely ignored, because right now he's completely free in drafts and he has a legit chance to be the number 2 pass game option in Chicago. Only primary competition right now is Byron Pringle, but I just think what Velus can bring to the table, namely that long speed, is going to separate him. If you are going to, throw a dart at a Bears wide receiver at the very end, last round of your draft to stack with Justin Fields, I do think it should be Velus Jones. Detroit Lions starting offense pretty much already established. Shout out to Nick Baumgartner and Colton Pouncey over at The Athletic. But Jared Goff, we know he's the quarterback, and Hawkinson's the tight end. But the starting three wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, DJ Chark on one side, Josh Reynolds on the other. I like throwing a late round dart at DJ Chark. This is someone that just hasn't really been healthy enough to do anything for large portions of his career. Does still have that 1,000-yard season and an even 16-game season to his name at this point. And Jared Goff, I know we don't like him, but we also saw him put together a lot of freaking good seasons for his fantasy receivers back in Los Angeles, and even Amon-Ra St. Brown last season. Final point with this, though, Jamal Williams, guys, he is going to have an early down role, and they reference this. Like DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, you could argue that it's actually almost a situation like what Arizona had last year with Chase Edmonds and James Conner. And I think Swift is better than Chase Edmonds, and we've seen more big playability, and I think the Lions are a little more comfortable running Swift than the Cardinals were with Edmonds. But Jamal Williams, guys, he's the favorite for goal line work. He can be a three-down guy should anything happen to DeAndre Swift. Where Jamal Williams is going in drafts, like the mid-RB50 range, to me, it's a good 10 spots later than he should be going. Green Bay Packers, Christian Watson starting on the PUP list after undergoing a knee procedure earlier in the offseason. Romeo Doubs just absolutely shining so far. Can't go a day without hearing more good things from the rookie, and he has a chance to stand out. Just monitor the pecking order in Green Bay more than anything at wide receivers. Still got Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, bunch of guys out there, and obviously Alan Lazard, as Aaron Rodgers said, tough to go from one Hall of Famer to another Hall of Famer. With the Minnesota Vikings, Irv Smith underwent thumb surgery but is expected to be ready by the start of the regular season. Sucks for Irv. Dude had some pretty funny tattoos he was talking about before training camp got going. Got a Hulk tattoo on his hand because he's going to smash the competition was the one I remember. But the good news is he is fully expecting to be back by week 1. And I'm going to take the discount in Fantasyland if we can get it, because Irv Smith really being set up to play that Tyler Higbee role in Kevin O'Connell's new offense. I don't give a shit about the Cooper Kupp role, everyone. Give me the Tyler Higbee role and give me the 3 wide receiver sets. That mean Irv Smith and KJ Osborne are going to be on the field more snaps than not this season. Those are the 2 late round targets to go after in the Minnesota Vikings offense. With the Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver room becoming a walking graveyard, guys. Michael Gallup with the ACL said he's probably not going to be ready for week 1. Just straight up said it's not a reasonable possibility. And James Washington now expecting to miss 6 to 10 weeks with that foot injury. So leaves the Cowboys painfully thin at wide receiver. But we got that one guy, CeeDee Lamb. Of course, CeeDee set up as a legit top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. I'm most interested to see, though, and this is a storyline we have every year, and it usually winds up being bullshit, but will the RB2 actually get more run in the slot or out wide this time around? That's the question with Tony Pollard. We know he can do it. He's talented enough as a true receiver to actually get some time lined up as a receiver. I'm not saying that he's going to overtake Ezekiel Elliott. We've seen the contract. We've heard the Cowboys talk about it. We've seen this for every single year. Ezekiel Elliott, whether you think he should be out there or not, will be working ahead of Tony Pollard. The question is, are the Cowboys stubborn enough to keep Tony Pollard on the bench for guys like Noah Brown, Jake Ferguson, Kavontae Turpin, shout out USFL MVP. I think Tony Pollard could have a bit more standalone value than guys are giving credit for him based on the lack of options in that wide receiver room. With the New York Giants, Wan'Dale Robinson getting plenty of first-team opportunities with Sterling Shepard on the PUP list due to that Achilles. The Athletic's Dan Dugan specifically noted that Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale are truly being used as offensive weapons. It's notable that they start individual drills by taking handoffs from Daniel Jones with the running backs before joining the receivers to work on routes. So I've kind of been under the impression that it's Kadarius Toney or Kenny Golladay to be the number 1 in this offense. Maybe, just maybe, Wan'Dale actually has something to say about that. At his price range, very affordable. The cheapest, realistic Giants wide receiver that's going to be starting this season. We will keep an eye on Sterling Shepard's recovery from that Achilles, though. With the Philadelphia Eagles, Miles Sanders remains the running back. Y'all, Tim McManus, we had the funny quote from, it wasn't a quote, it was an actual observation, but Miles Sanders running a little bit with the 2s in practice. And then we had to have, the coaching staff, Nick Sirianni, just clarify that, yes, Miles Sanders is our guy. There is no secret. Miles is our guy. Direct words from Nick Sirianni. He also said, though, and we like to rotate our backs, but he's the guy. So that's the thing here. I still do think Miles Sanders is going to lose an annoying amount of touches to Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, latter particularly in the passing game. But he is a starting running back in Philly. And the more he starts to slide, guys, it's an interesting phenomenon we've kind of been seeing this year, because the running back dead zone last season, it was, about RB kind of 16 or 17 to about the RB 25 range. The bigger issue with that range of running backs was that they were being pushed up into the 4th and 5th round. So it was like, why take these iffy running backs here when you still have great wide receivers? Now those iffy running backs like Miles Sanders, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Antonio Gibson, even at this point, guys that we have a lot of bad things to say about in terms of their projected workload. But if they're going in round 7 or 8, now all of a sudden we're not having to decide between Miles Sanders and a wide receiver 2. We're deciding between Miles Sanders and, like a wide receiver 4. So at that point, at that price point, I am fine going with Miles Sanders. Just keep an eye on if they end up re-signing Jordan Howard. That has been a slight rumor throughout the offseason. Final note from the Washington Commanders, per The Athletic's Ben Standig, Brian Robinson is going to be involved in this running back committee. Standig specifically said, at a minimum, Robinson is expecting to handle short yardage work duties given to Gibson last season following the release of Peyton Barber. So it's not great with J.D. McKissic there already. I mean, last year, weeks 1 through 12, when McKissic and Gibson were both healthy, Gibson was the RB 17 in PPR points per game. McKissic was the RB 22. Pretty damn close already. I think that might have actually been overall finishes, but as you can see, not a huge difference in terms of their overall PPR points there. Now we're going to add someone in to take away Gibson's rush attempts. That's the issue, guys, because Gibson did find his way to 300 touches last year. Guys like him, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor is the best example. We obviously want running backs to have as many touches as possible, ideally the targets. If they can't, though, hey, there's enough rush attempts. If he's a great player and a great offense, I'm sure they'll make it happen. But now Gibson's not looking like he's going to be vying for 300 plus touches as long as 3rd round pick. Brian Robinson is also siphoning into the early down work. McKissic's back on pass downs. I don't think Carson Wentz is quite as bad as, everyone, most notably the Colts brass, have made him out to be over the past few months. With that said, it wouldn't shock anyone if the Washington Commanders, are a bottom 10 offense at the end of the season. Gibson needs a lot to go right for him. And it's one of these situations, again, where please be careful when you hear people say, Gibson finished last season as the RB9. What was everyone afraid of? That was all because of him being able to play 17 games and also just being able to dominate usage over the last 5-6 weeks of the season when McKissic missed that time due to the concussion. So don't hate the player. Hate the ADP. If Gibson gets cheap enough, we'll go after it. But guys, cannot overstate enough how, not afraid, but just cautious we need to be of running back committees that look like they're going to have 3 or 4 running backs. So this has been 32 training camp takeaways with a fantasy football focus. Thanks for tuning in.